Welcome back, students. In this tutorial we're going to look at Python booleans. Booleans represent one or two values which can either be 0 or 1, true or false or true. Okay, 0 amounting to false and 1 amounting to true. So in programming you often need to know if an expression is true or whether it is false. You can evaluate any expression in Python and get one of two answers. Okay, so when you compare the variables, the expression is evaluated and Python returns a Boolean answer. At any point in time you want to make a comparison, okay, whatever that expression evaluates to must either be true or false. Okay, now we can quickly check, or rather by start printing. Let's say print 10 is 10 greater than 8. So this expression is going to give us true if it is greater than 8. So when we process it, we have true. Now if on the other hand we say is 10, print for us if 9 is less than 12. Print for us. It says false is not less than 12. So when you run a conditional statement, it will either return to true or false. Okay, so let's check this. We have a variable a that is set to 288 and then another variable b that is set to 45. Okay, now write a program and say, don't worry about if statement, or we're going to use it now. We are going to write a program to say if b is greater than a, what are you going to do? You put your colon. What are you going to do? Print. You now say b is greater than a. B is a. Now, if b is not greater than a, what are you going to do? So in this case, you press else. And put another colon again and say what you are going to print for us is that b is not greater than a. Okay. Now let's bring this to a small letter to make sure that we are matching with what we have as a variable. So with this you can now print and you say b is not greater than a. Why? Because obviously a is 288 and b is 45, so we can't match it. Okay, now you can use a Boolean to evaluate values of variables, or to evaluate values. Okay, now how do we do that? Instead of all these that we have here, let's quickly clean up this. Have the Boolean function, have the Boolean, so we use it to evaluate, say hello. Now we are evaluating this string. Does it have anything in it? And of course there is something in this string, even though it has not been assigned to anything. So but there is something here. So if we run this, we are going to get yes, true. If we run an integer instead, maybe 23, and we run it again, we are going to get true again. Okay, now how do we further explain this? How do we further explain this? Let's assume we have a variable x that is set to hello world. Okay, we have a variable x that is set to hello world, and then we have a variable y that is set to 24. So if we evaluate variable y here, what are we going to get? We are going to get, yes, there is variable y. It is true. Okay, it is true. But if we change this variable y to 0, what is it going to give us? it evaluates to false. So anything other than 0, when you are evaluating integer, is going to give you 1. That is true. Now in this thing, in this string, anything is going to give you anything string, even if it is white space like this, and you are printing the type of x, the bool, whether x is set or not. So when you press it, it's going to give you true. But because this white space represents something, we have 4 characters here, white spaces. So if we clean it up and then we run the program again, it's going to give us false, because this is showing that it is an empty string. Okay, so almost any value is evaluated to true if it has some sort of content in it. Any string is true except empty string, and any number is true except 0. Any list, tuple, set, and dictionary are true except empty ones. Now let's take, for instance, we want to check some things now. Let's print bool. Now we have bool. What are we passing to it? Let's pass a list to it. So inside of this we'll have mango, say orange. Now, sorry, the orange is actually going to be a string. Okay, we have this. So if we print this, it's going to give us true. Okay, so let's assume we take this list, Control X, call it Y. Now we take this list and put it here. So if we print the type of Y, what is it going to give us? It's going to give us true. Okay, so it's true. So and so on and so forth. So whatever any list, tuple, set, and dictionary, for the fact there are some things inside of it, is going to give you true. Now if I clean up the content of these lists now and I evaluate again, it's going to give me false. All right, now if I make this thing a dictionary or a set like this, and I evaluate, I run the program again, it's going to give me false. The same thing goes with tuple. Empty tuple is also going to give me false. All right, so that is it. Now one more value or object in this case will evaluate to false, and that is if you have an object that are made from a class with a len __ len function that returns 0 or false. Now that __ len function is actually a magic method. When we come to OOP, object oriented, when we come to discuss that area, we will understand that. But let's quickly write a program to that effect. Let's open a class and we call it let's just call it Grace. And then okay, inside of that class we define the magic function __ len. Okay, okay, and put this, and then we say that this function will return false. Okay, if this happens, and then we instantiate the object, call it my class. Now my class object is instantiated at this point. Okay, now if we print, we'll say print that my object. Okay, if we print this is going to give us false because this thing is returning false. Okay, so if we print this, it's showing us false at this point. Now let's see what happens if we print, if this thing returns true. Okay, and now you see it's returning true. Okay, so functions, there are also functions, many inbuilt functions that returns a Boolean value. Okay, for instance, we have an instance function which can be used to determine if an object is of a certain type. Now, when your object, for instance, you write a function that returns a value, you know, this thing now is actually a function that returns a value. Now, the value that it returns is true. So if you write a function that returns a value, if it returns true, then the bool type, the bool that will be, what the answer that will be shown you, excuse me, the function is going to evaluate to true if you pass it into this method. Okay, so that is it. Let's quickly have an example of checking if the instance of an object is of a particular type. All right, let's quickly check it now by, let's say, name, or writing, let's say first name is set to Izu, and then I now want to check if the instance, that is instance, is this instance of first name. Now the first thing I'm going to take, the first argument here is going to be the variable. Is this an instance of a string type? Okay, so this thing, because we have this as a string, is supposed to evaluate to true. Okay, now if I say, is this an instance of float, what is it going to tell me? It's not an instance of float. Okay, it's an instance of string. Okay, so that is how we check. And then if I call this and I say 20, and what I have here is still first name, and I set it this, and if I set this, still going to give me false because this actually is an instance of the integer object. Okay, and that is where we'll call it a day. See you again in the next lecture. God bless you.